What's wrong with a man entrusting another man with his dreams? This line from Ippomatsu feels so meaningful outside of the context it was in. I want to talk a little bit about one of the most important things in all of One Piece, if not something that is greater than the main character himself, and that would be his treasure. Yes, I want to talk about the Strawhat today. I was always waiting for a little bit more information before making a video like this, but I think it's going to be important to flesh this out before going into the last saga. So if you're not caught up with the manga, get caught up. And if you're new to my channel, the way I view the world is by making connections. So let me connect you to my vision, the ParVision. The legendary Strawhat. For the longest time, I thought Hawkins was going to be more impactful to the story, simply just because of the power he held. Though we are unsure if this power will be recycled, at the current point in the story, it seems like any storylines or plot relevance with Hawkins probably ended with his assumed death in chapter 1052. I say assumed death not because I don't think he's dead, but because of the fake out death conditioning that has accumulated throughout the story. But that being said, it always felt interesting that Oda gave Hawkins the power of straw and made him a tarot card wielding fortune-telling mystery man, which seemed to be a variation of Madame Charlie fortune telling with a crystal ball. So in a subtle way, Oda tied reading fate to the power of straw. But then on top of that, Hawkins didn't just have a normal straw paramecia. The fruit allowed Hawkins to use surrogate bodies to absorb damage inflicted on him through the voodoo dolls he carried that were manifested by his straw fruit. So now we have the concept that straw can tie fate by some extension, and we're kind of just left with no further explanation of who Hawkins was or how the power came to fruition. Was the voodoo aspect to his devil fruit power exclusive to just Hawkins, or if someone else eats the fruit, could they access that same power? But like I said, I was hoping that either we'd learn more about the Straw Hat from itself or possibly from some golden nuggets dropped by Hawkins. At this point of the story, we have to start asking ourselves some important questions about Luffy, especially considering our favorite rubber man is now our favorite rubber sun god Joy Boy who wants to be the Pirate King. Like, how much of his life was destined? Which takes me back to the first chapter where the narrator card at the very end establishes that Luffy's great voyage of destiny has begun. A lot of people take the start of the story and are using it to take away from what Luffy has accomplished throughout this long 1,000 chapter journey we have been on. I could talk at lengths about how having the potential to achieve something does not mean you are automatically guaranteed success. If that were the case, then our world would be a very different place. Luffy had the potential to achieve what the main character of the story is expected to, but I imagine so is Joy Boy, Noland, Roger. They all had potential, but Luffy seemingly had all the stars align. Actually, when you kind of think of it, it's almost like even with these past examples, each next iteration overcame what the last one couldn't. In Noland's case, he couldn't overcome the execution, and that ultimately halted his will from progressing in a positive way. But then when we look at Roger, he overcame the execution and used it to propel his will to the entire world. And his ultimate counter was having a terminal illness. And now we are at Luffy, and though he has had to sacrifice a lot of lifespan for it, apparently, between his own vitality and Chopper, I can't see him falling victim to what Roger couldn't overcome. And now in the last saga, we are probably going to witness Luffy overcoming what the original Joy Boy could not. And I'm not saying all of their wills lined up exactly, especially in Noland's case, but it does seem like one way or another, Luffy has inherited a will of some sort of directive that he will fulfill. But a normal shonen protagonist plot armor aside, it's not like this inherited will made Luffy's path any easier or harder for that matter. In my mind, Luffy may have inherited a will, but to be the proper carrier, the one to bring it to completion, that person has to have a strong will themselves. I mean, I know in the story the passing of wills is still a more nebulous concept, but if I wanted to pass on my will to someone to fulfill my ambitions, then I would choose someone with a greater will than my own. And maybe that's how we should start viewing Luffy, that he is the man who has had the willpower to overcome everything that the previous carriers could not endure. Which takes me back to the quote, "What's wrong with a man entrusting another man with their dreams?" This was said in Logtown by Ippomatsu. He spent all of maybe 5 minutes with Zoro. At the start, he was trying to scam Zoro and force him to sell his Wado Ichimonji for 3 lesser swords. But then Zoro showed his merit through his test with the Sandai Kitetsu, and Ippomatsu just bent the knee. He gave Zoro everything, including his family heirloom sword or his shop's treasured sword, for free. He even said that the Yubashiri was better than the Sandai Kitetsu in a few words. Zoro said he couldn't afford it, but Ippomatsu said never mind the money, just take it. In exchange for Zoro carrying whatever dream Ipumatsu had and couldn't fulfill, he said he would pray for his good fortune. And that is the element that I think is ultimately different about Luffy. I'm not trying to say that Luffy didn't struggle and work hard to make it to chapter 1053, where we see Luffy partying on Wano, a day some people never thought would come, or binge the entire series to make it too. We can look back at a lot of the struggle that Luffy had and see that he either overcame it through his sheer hard work and determination like he had when he climbed Drum Island to save Nami and Sanji, or he overcame it through his vitality buff provided by his mythical Zoan, like we can probably look at his time in Impel Down and his miracle survival being attributed to his devil fruit. But even with his mythical Zoan Nika fruit that has the epithet of a god attached to it, there were several times where Luffy had something else in his favor. There's several times in the series where Luffy could have actually died but made it through because of luck, whether it was luck of the moment or circumstantial luck, like this run-in with Aokiji. As he said himself, he could have easily killed and ended Luffy's journey right there, and even with current knowledge of Luffy's ability, I don't know if he could have survived being shattered like that. And we'll get into some of the other examples in a little bit, but I do think we should take a closer look at the luck aspect that Luffy seems to carry. It's weird to examine this trait in a character, but Oda has made it a point several times within the main plot and outside of it to emphasize how crucial this factor has been for Luffy. Like when Luffy survived the execution at Logtown, he says he was lucky. Doc Q from Blackbeard's crew tried to kill Luffy and Jaya, and Luffy survived from pure luck. I mean, the whole situation with the knockup stream occurring the way it did was pure luck as well. Even the old lady on Amazon Lily forecasted that Luffy's odd at succeeding in freeing Ace was a 1 in a million, and though he did succeed, we saw how slim the margins ended up being. And even when we bring ourselves to Onigashima when Luffy gets knocked off the island into the water, Luffy ended up surviving with what everyone considered to be immeasurable luck. Normally luck would be the equivalent of plot armor, but it feels like Oda might be preparing us for some element that might tie everything together or weave everything together. And as Blackbeard put it, it seems like fate is protecting Luffy. So before I move on, I just want to expand on that concept of luck within One Piece. See, I always say that there are certain elements of the movies that Oda has produced himself that can give us important clues for the canon story, if not just straight up give us the story plot entirely. Like I had that video showing how the Strong World movie was a sandbox prototype for literally the entire time skip up until chapter 1049. At the time of the video, the last parallel to be made was how Kaido was defeated, and I questioned whether it would mirror how Shiki was defeated. And yeah, no, it was literally the exact same situation. In both cases, the King of Beasts was struck down by a god. That being said, in movie Gold, there was a very interesting devil fruit power that Oda tossed out. And by tossed out, it was confirmed in a previous interview that any fruit we saw in a filler setting would never be brought into the canon story. But the power I'm talking about is the Raki Raki no Mi, or the lucky fruit. The user could absorb and stockpile other people's luck. When they became unlucky, they suffered a series of unfortunate events. Honestly, Nolan could be said to have suffered the greatest series of unfortunate events in comparison to what this power did. But it could make you so unlucky that your own attacks could somehow randomly rebound and hit you or your own allies. And a point was made at the start of the movie that Luffy was so incredibly lucky that once she absorbed Luffy's luck, she was nearly invincible. So Oda has played around with this concept before, and again, this movie was produced by Oda. So it could be that Oda is planning on introducing this in some way, and maybe has already planted the seeds for things along this path. I mean, Hawkins seemed like the best example until he wasn't, but there's also Yarouge. It's not the same thing, and we have very little information on him, but we do know that he has a power to intake damage and increase physical size and strength, but also his move was called Karma Exposure. Now, Karma is part of the belief system in Hinduism and Buddhism, and this is the basic definition of it. The force generated by a person's actions that ultimately help determine the nature of the person's next existence. One, doesn't this sound just like the concept of passing on wills that we were talking about earlier in the video? But also, it's like Hawkins could manipulate karma to transfer the force taken by him onto another person. In the context of modern times, or probably how it will be seen in the story, is more of a short-term effect rather than a reincarnation or past future life context. I'm not saying that it won't be present, but if we were to put this into the context of luck, it seems like the higher amount of luck increases your odds in the karmic scales. Another definition of karma is a characteristic emanation, aura, or spirit that infuses or vitalizes someone or something. So it can can be said that receiving someone's karma can be empowering, and that is another thing we have seen throughout the story. It seems like Nika itself is an empowering figure, and that possibly increases the luck of those around him, which is why people gravitate towards the entity. I mean, if imparting karma was possible, then 100% Luffy has sort of blessed everyone he's interacted with. Well, in a gag way, his crew has always had it rough dealing with Luffy, but like I'm thinking about like Kobe. Sure, Kobe probably had his own potential, but since meeting Luffy, Kobe skyrocketed from marine fodder to hero of the marines, just like Garp, just on a smaller scale. But then we have other characters like Usopp and Buggy, and I think Buggy is the best example right now as we are witnessing live the falling upward effect in full force. As much as I know that Buggy deserves the title of Yonko at this point in the story given the circumstances of the story, I would be wrong if I didn't also attribute a lot of Buggy's success to insane luck and good fortune. All that being said, we don't know much of Luffy's propensity towards luck prior to eating the devil fruit, but I'm not sure if the fruit itself is also responsible for his insane luck. It may have been fate that led Luffy to the fruit, but there was something else very important to the story given to Luffy, and that was the Straw Hat. Now let's remember the path of this legendary Straw Hat. This is the Straw Hat that was held by the first person to make it to Laugh Tale in 800 years, and from our understanding, the first Pirate King. At some point in Roger's and Shanks' relationship, Roger gave Shanks the hat, and we all know the story basically starts when Shanks gives the hat to Luffy. But at the minimum, this hat is a special hat. This hat has touched greatness. It was with the Pirate King and now with Sun God Nika, and who knows what role Shanks was playing when he had the hat. I mean, I think I know, but you'll have to wait a little bit longer for that video. It'll be out before Movie Red for sure. And before I continue, if you enjoyed this video so far, consider subscribing and liking the video as it helps me tremendously. But yeah, I would go as far as to say that this hat is just as much of an MC of this story as Luffy is, if not more. I mean, his pirate crew is named after it, he is referred to as Straw Hat Luffy, and when we cosplay Luffy, the fastest way to do it is just wearing a straw hat. The straw hat is literally Luffy's brand. And more than that, I've always had the feeling, even when I was a kid, that the Straw Hat was going to be more than just a straw hat. I mean, it already is in meaning and in sentiment, but I'm talking about function and impact now. I think the Straw Hat might have an active role in the story, and it might have already been playing that role as the unsung hero of the story. The moment that I got this feeling was actually Luffy's execution in Logtown. Now, I spoke about this before in small parts in various videos and streams and tweets, but to briefly explain it, in chapter 99 when Luffy was being executed by Buggy, it always struck me as odd that in the anime and manga, Oda decided to show this spark being created between the sword and Straw Hat. I mean, scientifically, that's a little weird considering Luffy is rubber and straw isn't a great conductor either. But even without that, it felt unnecessary since Buggy was on top of this altar swinging a giant lightning rod in the sky in the middle of a storm. So the detail of the spark felt extra to the scene. I mean, the surface level point of the lightning was to save Luffy in a completely coincidental moment, and Oda already created the setting for it to happen, so that little small extra detail felt interesting. But what really sold it to me were two things. The first one being in the anime and manga, after the lightning strike, one thing was emphasized, and it wasn't Buggy or Luffy, it was the Straw Hat. The way this scene felt to me was that the Straw Hat was the cause of the lightning strike. Through some power that I could not explain at the time, the Straw Hat saved Luffy, and what's funnier is right after the Straw Hat is emphasized, Luffy says, "I'm alive. Lucky me." Was it luck? I mean, it was luck, but luck from what? Now, the rest of the incidences where Luffy is in a perilous situation and overcomes it, he tends to have the Straw Hat with him. So it's hard to associate the hat playing an active role in these instances. But there was the instance on Onigashima that had me feeling something similar. I made a video a while ago saying that Luffy displayed a new power in Onigashima, and it was basically controlling telepathy. But in that circumstance, he was knocked out, but had the hat, and considering this was a power we've never seen before, I was wondering if the Straw Hat itself played a role in facilitating this rescue, which sounds weird right now, but I'll explain in a second. See, the second thing that stood out to me about the Straw Hat is actually a little stretchy, but I admit this discussion is more of a reach, and if we had not gotten the announcement for the last saga, I probably would have waited a bit longer to see if there was more evidence to this theory. So that being said, the second thing is that the Straw Hat seems to be indestructible. After everything Luffy has been through, there's been times when the hat was stolen or nearly lost, but not once has it been in danger despite the battles Luffy has been through. I mean, the best example I think is versus Enel. Luffy himself is immune, but his clothing isn't, and he drew the progressive damage that his garments took, but the hat was also in the immune category. Now I know it's an anime and this isn't in the ecchi category where someone getting slapped can knock off nearly all of a character's clothing, but this stuck out to me because Oda was drawing the damage to Luffy's clothing, but not the Straw Hat. And on top of that, it's not like we are supposed to regard Luffy's hat as indestructible. I mean, our favorite Yonko is the only person to date to have damaged the Straw Hat, and I'm not sure if that says more about Buggy or the method of destruction he used. Maybe just like Luffy, the Straw Hat is only affected by slash attacks, or maybe you need to use Haki to damage the hat, furthering the Buggy having Haki proficiency agenda. But regardless of that, Oda has created a precedence in the story for this hat to be damaged or destroyed, not just at the start of the story, but throughout the story, and that's why it being Luffy's treasure is so important. That being said, for it not to have been a thing to worry about at all despite all the absurd battles Luffy has been through is kind of interesting. It's almost like the Straw Hat is a poneglyph level impervious to destruction, which is kind of funny because we know poneglyphs originated on Wano, but we are seeing a huge emphasis of straw hats being made in Wano. I mean, Amigasa in Amigasa village in Kuri means a woven straw hat made from bamboo fibers. So there is that connection on top of everything Ace did with Tama involving straw hats, including making one for Orange Jr. But something that piqued my interest was something else that may have originated on Wano, and that is vivre cards. Vivre cards are low-key a soft mystery that I can't wait to learn more about, though as of right now, we don't know where vivre cards are manufactured, or what the process is, or where the idea originated from. A small detail was that the vivre card that Ace had for himself that he gave to Luffy in Alabasta was the vivre card created by Yamato in Wano. And the thing about Yamato is that she made it out of Ace's fingernails, but was isolated and basically chained to the island, and she had very little exposure to the outside world or chance to learn something like this unless it came from within Wano. So I'm curious to know who taught Yamato how to make vivre cards. Was it those daimyo samurai that she became friends with, or maybe it was written in Odin's journal? There's not many sources other than possibly the Beast Pirates, and that isn't a dead end either. We still have very little understanding of how the Marys work in terms of their communication and omnivision. Some are cyborgs, but it seems like the controllers are human Marys, and interestingly, the connection amongst all of them is this weird paper on their face. Maybe this is a tool we'll never learn about, but I made a video about it a while ago, and what it reminded me of was some sort of in-between of Denden Mushis and that telepathy that Luffy displayed. Maybe this is another special case paper device that crops up later. But alright, we're well within this tangent now, so how does this relate to the Straw Hat? So we don't know how the straw hat was woven or what it's made of. But if we were to take the part of the hat being nearly indestructible, then what would be really cool is if the straw hat was made from vivre cards somehow. See, another attribute of the vivre card is that apparently the paper is waterproof and fireproof, so who knows how much that extends out. The vivre card can still be torn, like how Buggy cut the hat, but the paper itself can only be destroyed if the person's life it's attached to withers away, like we saw with Ace. In the instance the person recovers from their dire situation, the paper is restored to its original state. So then in a lot of ways, the straw hat could actually fit the description of maybe being a vivre card. But then the question is, what life force is it tied to? And that's where it becomes obvious, but also kind of crazy sounding. So it sounds like this hat belongs to Joy Boy, but then again, maybe the hat in Mary Joie that Emu has is Joy Boy's hat. But however the names get split, I was thinking if the straw hat were a vivre card, it might be for Nika. meaning that the Straw Hat is tied to the life force that is Nika within the devil fruit that Luffy ate. Now, you're probably extremely confused or jaw dropped, but when I started thinking of this, it started answering a bunch of questions. Like, how did Shanks even find and track the fruit in the first place? If the Straw Hat that Luffy wears is a vivre card for the Nika fruit, then it would guide the person to that fruit. We are unsure of the originator of this vivre card, but similar to how Zunisha cannot be found through a log post, only through a vivre card, similarly, if you could make a vivre card of a devil fruit, that would be an insane way to track them. Maybe that's how the world government procured all of their insane level devil fruits. So that being said, since the devil fruit is preserving Nika, the Straw Hat may remain indestructible until someone eventually takes up the mantle of Joy Boy or Sun God Nika, which is what Luffy is technically doing at the moment. And there's more questions that are answered by this theory. In chapter 1, when Shanks lost track of Luffy, maybe he found him because he just let the hat guide him until he could notice where Luffy was, and the significance of him giving the hat to Luffy is even greater with this. If he didn't believe in Luffy, then it wouldn't make sense to give up the hat, because in the instance that Luffy dies, then he would need the hat to then track down the special devil fruit again. He would be letting go his lifeline to Sun God Nika, and when he says keep this hat safe for me, essentially means don't die, but it was in that moment that Shanks believed in Luffy so much that he had no doubt that Luffy would overcome everything in his path, which is why Shanks gave up his arm, and also adds that he saw himself in Luffy. Everything fits a lot of what Shanks says, but adds more gravity to the meaning behind it all. In a lot of ways, this Straw Hat feels like it was more special than Luffy. It would be crazy if it was loaded up with a special material like the vivre card and maybe even whatever paper the Marys used for their telepathy. I just want to add that this isn't the only fabric that Oda has taken the time to introduce to be special. Through a cover story with Bellamy, Oda showed that, well, one, for those of you who don't know, after Dressrosa, Bellamy quit being a pirate and became a professional dyer, a person who makes pirate flags in the story, and he seemed to be working with unbreakable fabric, yet another possible component to the Straw Hat. Maybe that ribbon is this fabric. And again, I know this theory sounds kind of crazy, but to be honest, originally I had more of a feeling that the hat was just this dormant person, kind of like a certain thing in Black Clover. That's vague enough where it's not spoiler, but also Oda did draw a personified version of the Straw Hat. And from what we know about how Oda personifies swords is that this might indicate the creator of the hat. So this might actually be an image of someone really important to the story. Like, why does this guy have a Moria-like stitch on their head? But yeah, it'll be interesting to see if this character pops up anywhere. It would be really crazy if this was just Emu or something. But whoever this person is, it seems like whoever created the hat might have imbued the hat with some kind of will or positive karma that might have provided good fortune to those who wear it. Because let's be honest, whoever wears this hat and follows the lines of destiny that they're faced with, as Mihawk puts it, it's one of the most perilous paths imaginable. And on the topic of karma, karma can feel like a curse, and throughout the story we've seen how curses present themselves. Someone who is cursed might say they have bad karma, and what's interesting about that is we still don't know how the Kitetsu school works, or how they managed to create what became to be understood as cursed swords. Maybe they imbued these swords with karma rather than a will, or maybe karma is attached to will too. It would be crazy if Haki made blackened blades, but karma was what was needed to forge a real black blade like Yoru and Shusui. But I digress again. The importance of the hat is beyond even what I had spoken about in this video. If you haven't heard of the channel Hidden Island yet, please go check him out. He created this amazing theory about what the One Piece is, and I would consider it an extremely compelling mega theory. But also, it's a mega theory that somehow nearly coincides with my own mega theory. Hidden Island and I spoke volumes about this during my Voice of All Things episode 10 stream, posted on my VODs channel as well. I would also tell you to go check out his Rome Piece video too, because that serves as a great preface to his video, this video, but also because of that video, we decided that sometime in August, we would be aiming to put out a Rome Piece Part 2 video on my channel, furthering the ideas brought up in these videos. That being said, in his Truth About Everything video, he briefly talks about the major importance of why the Straw Hat is so key to the end game of One Piece. That being said, if what Hidden Island said about the Straw Hat is true, then making it out of special material like we discussed here today would almost be imperative. And the evidence will deepen in my own Void Century video that is coming up and that Rome Piece Part 2 video. Thank you for making it this far in this video. I hope you enjoyed the journey. This was one of my less thought out theories that I kind of just wanted to get out rather than hold in. So if you enjoyed this vision, let me know by commenting, sharing, liking, and if you aren't already subscribed, then subscribe and hit the notification bell because the videos in queue are next level. If you're ever wondering why I haven't uploaded regularly and you want the latest updates, join my Discord server. It's the best place to update the community on things, and I love the community there. Also, real quick, thank you everyone who supported me before and during and after the Reverie. I really appreciate you all. And so, like always, thank you for connecting with me, and I'm looking forward to connecting with you all on the next ParVision.